Welcome to the SpiritWoke Podcast, podcasting from the beautiful city of Stillwater, the birthplace of Minnesota. Are you going through a spiritual awakening? Do you wish to learn more about continued spiritual growth and want to meet others who are on a similar journey? We hope that this podcast and its community can be a meaningful resource for you. The SpiritWoke Podcast welcomes special guests from around the globe who share personal stories of their awakening journey, along with details of spiritual abilities they've developed along the way. So buckle up and get ready for this exciting episode. And now, here's your host, Adam Dins.
Friends, welcome back to the SpiritWoke Podcast. On today's episode, we talk about the power of meditation in coping with trauma with special guest Hanna. Erica is a 6-time Emmy Award-winning creative producer, shooter, director, writer, editor, speaker, and video coach. To date, she has raised $30,000 for water wells in Africa. Erica is also the 2014, 2015, 2016 top Twitter personality right here in Minneapolis and spends most of her free time advocating for sexual assault survivors. Erica, welcome to the SpiritWoke Podcast. We're so happy to have you with us.
Hi, how's it going? I'm so happy to be here. Exciting.
It is exciting to have you. For those who are enjoying this show, Eric and I go back many years, and it's amazing how our path just keeps intertwining in different ways. I'm just so fascinated by it.
Absolutely. It's like from professional to spiritually and, the education realm. They're very much interwoven.
It's so true. Eric and I met at a marketing conference, I think back in like 2013 or so. I think it was either 2013 or 2014. And is that about when it was?
I think so. I was just trying to remember that as we were gearing up for the recording. I was like, when was that, man?
Yeah, it was a while. It was a good while ago. But yeah, it was. Erica was full of energy and light, and just a phenomenal presenter. And we ended up staying in contact and became friends. And Erica has spoken to a class that I've taught at the college level. She taught my students how to do amazing things with video. And
you're so great. You just tee it up so well, though. Because you're a great professor. You could tell that they love you. So you made it really easy.
Hey, you made my job easy. I just sat there and smiled. So, but anyway, now here we are talking about spirituality, and it's so cool because, when I sort of came out, if you will, with my spiritual awakening, Erica reached out to me, and it's just so amazing when you just get the confidence in yourself to come out and share what you're going through, because there's so many people out there. And I encourage those of you who are listening to this podcast who may just be going through the initial phases of this spiritual awakening, and maybe you're a little afraid to share with the public with what's going on, because maybe you don't know what people are going to think about you, or you're not ready to kind of put yourself out there. Just know that when you do, the universe will bring people into your life that are going through the same things that you are, and you'll find so much fellowship in that space.
Absolutely. And it's like not only will you find fellowship and friendship, but also I think just guidance, because it can be really confusing at first, because it's like all these new emotions and higher powers, and it's like, whoa, what's happening? And I don't know about you, Adam. I guess we haven't really talked about this, but I know that when I kind of went, like you said, it's like almost like a little bit of a coming out, and I don't want to, our friends that are oppressed in the LGBTQ community, obviously not the same thing, but I just, it's interesting. It is like a reemergence, right? And I remember when I started talking about it publicly that I'm from a tiny town, and my dad over the holidays was like, what are you putting on the internet? Everybody says you're crazy. What's happening? And it's like, oh no, what? Yeah.
Exactly. And it's at the same time, people kind of know you for who you used to be in a lot of
Yeah,
senses.
yeah. And some people don't like that, right? Because change is scary. And, behind, I would just say to anyone who's encountering people that are kind of being naysayers or whatnot, just remember that I would say conflict is always rooted in fear. So it's just having patience and understanding with those folks to say like, hey, I'm just, I'm evolving. It's cool. Don't worry about it. So,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
and also when it comes to the topic of spirituality, that's just one
Mhm.
of those topics that it's a hot button issue. And so, everything, especially nowadays, is so politicized. And I shouldn't even say nowadays. I guess it's always been that way, and
Right.
and Erica,
Yeah.
you and I have talked about prior to the podcast,
Yeah.
just the stigma even behind the use of the word God. It can
For
it can really
sure.
have a powerful effect on people, both in a positive and negative way. And so when you come out and you
Absolutely.
start talking about a spiritual awakening,
Mhm.
you may run into some friction, but that's okay because we're all living our story here. We're all living our lives, and we have to be free to be who we are and be comfortable in our own skin.
Absolutely. And I think it's just so important that we all remember that my journey is not your journey and vice versa, right? And we can kind of take what we need, at the or learn what we need at the time and just continue to evolve. So there's no like right way or wrong way to do it, I don't think anyway.
Completely
So
agree. Completely
yeah,
agree. Who wrote the
yeah.
book on it, right?
Right?
So, Erica, I'm so happy you alluded into we all kind of have our own journeys and our own
Yeah.
paths, and I'd love to start the conversation off, though we've already started it off with
Mhm.
just asking you to tell our listeners a little bit about your awakening experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was it like? What's the journey been like for you so far?
For sure. So, I would say that I was religious, like as a kid, definitely. My first ever concert was DC Talk, and Audio Adrenaline, and that type of thing. But then I just had kind of, I'm not going to get into it, but kind of a negative experience in my church. A closed-minded experience that didn't seem, I don't know, to me in my heart, it didn't seem loving and, godlike or whatever that would be. And so I'm not going to lie, I kind of stepped away for a long time, kind of thinking, well, all religion is like that, and, gosh, it was probably a decade later, that I, of course, I think I was watching Oprah and she had Eckhart Tolle on. And, I went out and bought his book, A New Earth, and I thought, well, if Oprah says it changed her life, I'm going to read this thing. And I sat down and I hated it. I'm not going to lie.
Oh,
Like
wow.
the first time around, I was like not in the headspace to be ready, right? And I think
Oh,
it's one of
yeah.
those things where you're like, you see in something what you see in yourself at that moment.
Mm.
And I was in a bad place where I was 100% only focused on awards and career achievement and uh, egoic thinking, I would say. And so all I saw is, well, this guy is arrogant. He's pushy. He's trying to get me to do things differently, whatever. And I remember like tossing the book in my little magazine rack and being like, nah, that's not for me. And then I tried to come back to it a couple different times thinking, everybody keeps talking about this book. It must be great. And I just was not in the headspace until I met um, this guy who was really, really chill. And he was a client of mine at the time. And I don't know, when you meet someone and there's just something about them, and it wasn't an attraction or anything like that. Nothing sexual or weird, but um it was like, wow, I feel calmer when I'm around this person. And so easy to just talk and whatnot. And finally I said to him, I said, how can you look at the world this way? So just you're living in this moment and it seems beautiful. You seem so at peace. And of course, he's like, well, I read this book by Eckhart Tolle. And I was like, no, no, And I said, okay, I'm going to give it one more time and we'll see. And he said, hey, like, hit me up if anything seems really confusing and I'll kind of cliff notes it for you. And that's what we did. Like, he kind of helped me through the book, and the parts that I was finding a lot of conflict with, he would explain in more relatable terms. He was a musician, I was a musician, and that brought it into kind of a new light for me. And I don't know. I just started thinking about being present and the concept of being present. And I had always been someone that had anxiety. So the concept of not worrying about something the next day was so foreign to me. But at the same time, it became so comforting that I went to work and my coworkers were, I remember our executive producer at WCCO saying, are you okay? I'm like, what do you mean, okay? I feel great. The sun is shining. Like, the grass is green. Life is amazing. And she's like, did you do drugs before you came in to work? And I was like, no, life is grand. So, that was the big, turning point. And from then, like, just like you said, Adam, a brilliant way to say it, when you put things out there in the universe, it hears you, right? And it just came back in droves and ended up, getting the chance to work for the Nobel Peace Prize Forum and meeting so many wonderful spiritual people there, Peace Prize winners that just change your heart just to even be in the same room, to hear them, and I'll never forget sitting next to Muhammad Yunus, who's a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and asking him for his autograph on his book because I love his book. And he looked up at me and he laughed and he paused and this is at a point in my life where I was really, really down. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I, trigger warning. I had suicidal thoughts kind of around this time. I was really grasping for some help, and I hadn't gotten help yet. And oddly enough, he looked up at me and he said, I feel weird signing this for you because I feel like someday I'm going to ask you if you'll sign your book for me. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, this is like 8 years ago and I'm like a kid, and he's like, oh, it's just your spirit around you. I can tell something's going to happen. And it's interesting. Sometimes it just takes like one person putting a thought in your head, whether he meant it or not. Well, I mean, I'm sure he meant it, but it opened my heart to so many things, in the future then.
That's
I don't know, but I'm just rambling at this point. But
no, I think it's beautiful, and you're right. It's interesting how the universe does bring people into your life at the moment that you need them, and oftentimes we want things, and it's something that I've learned over the course of my spiritual awakening. That we're given things by the universe when we're ready for it, and even if we yearn for things that we don't have, whether it's material or not, oftentimes we don't have it because we're not ready for it. But when it does come, it's the perfect time, and to your point, I had a similar experience where, I was at this, call it a psychic fair, if you will. Ooh. And, I had been kind of listening to books, for the past year on my commute in and out of work, my hour commute each way, all about, the other side and life after death and past lives and future lives and all of that stuff. And I was so fascinated by it. And, I could feel something changing, but I couldn't tell you what it was, my perspective started changing, my beliefs started changing, and it wasn't anything intentional. It was just that there was this truth that I was discovering through these folks' experiences. And so here I am at this, and I hate calling it a psychic fair, because you just get these visions in your mind of the
Sure.
visions. So,
Yeah.
but very respectable event though. And this gentleman who was there, who reads auras, he was reading mine for me, and he goes, "Oh, you're going through a spiritual awakening, aren't you?" And
What? That's
yeah,
so crazy. Cool.
yeah, and I remember at that moment I was like, "A what? What the hell is a spiritual awakening?" And then it's like,
Right.
"Oh, that's what that is." And like
Mhm.
to your point with the gentleman who sort of, call it, spiritually mentored you for that moment, that was like a brief spiritual mentorship for me, where it was like pouring gas on the fire, and from that moment it was like I knew what was happening, I understood what was happening, and it's like, okay, cool, I'm just going to let this go and see where it takes me.
Yeah. Oh, what a great story. I love that.
It's cool. That's such an awesome story. And so Erica, we'll talk more about the spiritual awakening
Mhm.
if we have time to, or if we have time for it. But your story to me is so fascinating, and I want our listeners to hear it and to
Mhm.
understand. How when tragedy strikes, it's easy to blame the universe. It's even easy to disavow spirituality completely,
Mhm.
especially when tragedy or trauma happens over and over again. But
Mhm.
in your life, trauma, you've really found solace in spirit, in
Mhm.
meditation. You found peace through connecting with your soul through meditation. Erica, I'd love it if you would kind of just share this process. How did it unfold for you? How has sort of this spirituality helped you in your life and where you are?
Yeah. So as far as unfolding goes, the meditation side of things, much like the very first spiritual awakening side of things, it happened while I was kicking and screaming for it not to happen. I feel like, it's like I resisted and resisted. And I think that's important to note that it's not always like a whee, like you just float into it or whatever. But I so I had tried to meditate about a bajillion times, right? And uh I just kept getting stuck and didn't realize that all that was monkey mind. And that where your thoughts kind of take over in the middle of the meditation. And I have ADHD, and I just kept thinking, I can't even do that right. I can't even sit here in silence the right way. A little perfectionist mentality there, and
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, and it wasn't until I don't even know where it was. I feel like it was, I don't, maybe some tutorial or something. Probably I found it on YouTube, and the person mentioned monkey mind, like the concept of monkey mind, and it was the first time I was like, "Wait, this happens to everyone? Yay, I'm not messing up. This is great," And so I thought, well, I'll try this meditation thing. And then I did it for a little while, and then I just kind of left it, and I do want to just really quick trigger warning for anyone listening that I'm going to talk a little bit about surviving trauma and sexual trauma. So I'm going to try to be sensitive around the phrases I use, but just wanted to, let people know that. um, so yeah, anyway, I went through some trauma, specifically sexual assault and kidnapping, and a few other things that I won't get into, but um, I felt like I was in this spiral constantly. And the only thing I could think to do at the time, because this is before I found my little monkey mind tutorial, um, was to fill my mind with other things. And so, where some trauma survivors will cling to drugs or alcohol, and rightfully so, those are coping mechanisms that a lot of people use, to survive. I became kind of a workaholic, and sleeping 2 to 4 hours a night is all, and kind of obsessive about everything. And it was my way of never having, like, oh, now I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about those bad things because I'm too busy thinking about everything else. And, eventually that catches up to you. It just does. And I ended up in the hospital and, from like, I think they called it severe exhaustion, and my body was going into septic shock because I was just mistreating it, and had strep throat and tonsillitis at the same time, 104 fever, and didn't even notice really. I was like, no, I have a deadline. I gotta go. And when I got out of the hospital, my doctor was like, something has to change. In fact, I'm putting you on bed rest. And wow, there's nothing like putting a perfectionist, productive person on bed rest. It's like you could have said, I'm sending you to jail. And I would have been like, I'd rather go to jail, like than be on bed rest. And yeah, so that's when I first started exploring meditation. And I again went, I decided actually the time that it actually really clicked was a little over a year ago. I started using the app Headspace. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but
Yes, I absolutely am.
yeah, awesome. So, I mean, it also appeals to my competitive nature since it keeps kind of score of how many days in a row you've been doing it, so,
Absolutely.
and, I don't know, I'm on day 402, I think right now. So just trying to keep that streak going. And the thing is like, I didn't even really notice that it was doing anything. It became kind of like this, oh, I want to, I'm just going to say that I did it for 30 days. And my therapist that was helping me with the trauma actually was the one that said, like, what's going on with you? Because you are not reacting as panicked or as triggered as you were, a month ago. And I was like, really? Is it different? I don't know. I didn't even really notice, and I told her about meditation, and I just started noticing that, the further I got into it, it was almost like my rebound time was faster if I was triggered, It's like I could find a place of silence, which had been my fear before. Silence is what I'd feared because silence is when the demons would come back, and when, you and I were talking about this earlier, Adam, that a lot of people don't realize when you have PTSD from trauma, and you say the word triggered, I know it's become kind of a joke in society, or a synonym for I'm bothered by something. But in medical terms, it technically means that it feels like you strapped on a virtual reality headset and you're seeing the worst moment of your life all over again, and you're reliving it, and your blood pressure and your pulse and everything reverts back to that day or night or whatever it was. And to go through those things, it's like it gave me a roadmap of how to find my way back. Because when you come out of it, you're like, now what do I do? Like I just sit here and rock myself, or like what, because that's what I would do before. No, it's like, no, I think I need to turn on Headspace and listen to that English dude's voice for a while and fall into some meditation and try to find a good place, So that's been, in a nutshell, how we got there.
So let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
It hasn't personally happened for me this way, but I've definitely heard warnings about meditation because, to your point, like when you, after you went through this trauma, you dealt with it by keeping busy and keeping your mind busy and working. And so when I first started meditating, some of the things that I read was that when you do get quiet, right, and you do sort of get onto your meditation pillow and sort of connect with your soul, in a way that quietness can bring up a lot of the things that you're dealing with, and just to be careful for that. And so, did you
Yeah.
experience that when you started meditating? Did you experience that when you did get quiet with yourself, that some of the pain or some of the memories that you had would resurface, or was it more just peaceful for you?
I would say that 90% of it was peaceful. I don't remember. For me, triggering happens when it's like one of the senses. If I see something, smell something, feel something, that's similar to when the attack actually happened. Um, or it would happen, the only time that I was quiet that triggering happens would be if I was having nightmares. That's what I would say. But I do know a few people that I've talked to who have experienced in trauma that they actually, you know what? Now that I say that, this did happen to me. So this is a little bit different, but that when I was meditating at first, that first 30 days, now that you mention it, I had more nightmares. So I never even really put that together until you said that just now. And I'm wondering if that might be why. But it wasn't conscious triggering, where things are happening at work or on set or anything like that. So I just hadn't thought to examine it all that much, but that was probably a correlation. It's like your mind opening back up and trying to trust yourself. And, with PTSD, it basically means that your brain has miscatalogued information. And that's the way that my therapist describes it, that it basically tells you that something that happened, something like for me, it happened 12 years ago. It tells your brain that it's happening in this moment right now. So it's not a memory for people with PTSD. It's an actual living, breathing, terrifying thing that just keeps happening to them over and over, and that's why meditation and then the process of I'm going through EMDR therapy right now, it recatalogs everything in the right places. So yeah, pretty cool.
And it's amazing too when you do repress those things, when you do repress the experiences that you have, the negative experiences, and how they do sort of manifest in the body. They just kind of, they kind of burrow, right? And they hide. They find the cracks and the little holes in your spirit, and they just kind of hang out there. And when you finally do start to come back to yourself and to your spiritual nature, it's almost like those two things can't live in the same place, right? Like like an awakening and the pain can't, or not the pain, but the awakening and repression really can't live in the same place. So you're almost sort of forced in one way or another, whether it comes through dreams, or you go to therapy and you talk to someone, or whatever the best method is for dealing with that trauma. But and I found that a lot of people that I've met who, are going through awakening, and even those who have experienced significant mystical things, right? They've come from a place where they've faced trauma and serious trauma, like, or serious mental health issues, like severe depression, suicidal tendencies, and they've sort of they're reconnecting with their souls, help them to get past that, and when they and not, I won't even go as far as getting past it, although many of them have, but just kind of going through that process opens them up to this incredible experience with spirituality that, I don't know how to explain it, because that wasn't my story, but some of the accounts that I've heard, it's just fascinating.
I would agree. And I think, again, the important thing to remember is that, like you said, everybody's story is different. We're all just living our stories, right? And there's no right way or wrong way to go about healing or awakening or anything like that.
Similar to your story, although not similar per se, but in December of 2017, I was diagnosed with PTSD as it relates to loss. And not to go into too many
Absolutely.
personal details here, because this isn't about me. This is about you. But when I started going through Awakening, I found this meditation book. It was an audio book meditation. I think I've mentioned it on the first episode of the SpiritWoke podcast. But Dr. Eben Alexander, who wrote the book Proof of Heaven, about his near-death experience, released this book called Seeking Heaven, which is a guided meditation, a semi-guided meditation book that he put together. But essentially what he did was he recalled the different sounds that he heard when he crossed over into the other side, for lack of a better term. And, he was on the other side for 7 days, or in the other side for 7 days. And he was in a coma for, I believe, 10 days. And so he spent a lot of time over there, and his experience, his experience is phenomenal. But he remembered, as he kind of progressed through that plane, if you will, or through those planes, he remembered the different sounds that he heard and the different vibrations that he heard. And so he has this book called Seeking Heaven, and there are 4 different meditations, and they're about 30 minutes apiece, and they're each a different sound, based on a different sound or sounds that he heard. And they're kind of binaural beats mixed with a few other things. And
cool.
And that was really my first foray into meditation, because I read his book, Proof of Heaven, and I'm like, this is unbelievable. A neurosurgeon kind of talking about how there really is such a thing as near-death experience and life after death and all this cool stuff. And so, I didn't know what I was doing. I just downloaded the book, and I put my headphones on. And, after about 3 weeks of 30 minutes at night, just closing my eyes and listening to it, I found that this struggle that I had with loss, that was regular, it was all the time. It was just constant sadness and constant, crying and depression. And I didn't even realize how much a part of myself that it became, how much of my identity that it became. And after a couple weeks, and I know this won't be the same for everybody, I'm just, anecdotally speaking here, but holy moly, like I was a new person, and it's just kind of refreshed.
Wow. That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. And do you find that if you, because we're not like immune to those feelings, even after awakening, like we all have our ebbs and flows, right? Do you find when you feel kind of down maybe again, do you circle back to that, or have you at all, or not? I don't know. I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's interesting. I, at least for my own meditation practice, I've kind of found that once a certain meditation's had its shelf life, it's hard for me to go back to it. Like you, I'm the kind of person where I always want to feel like I'm progressing and moving on to the next thing, and whether or not that's real, in my mind it is. So in that monkey mind. So
absolutely.
No, I don't go back to that one per se. I've done it a couple of times, but and it's great when I do, but I find myself wanting to continue on. But I found that, though, the struggle that I've had with loss is definitely mitigated in a lot of ways. And I think part of it is, as you kind of go through the spiritual journey, if you will, like I've experienced a lot of things outside of meditation now. Like I've had a past life regression where, I saw a past life. And once you see a past life and you understand that you're an eternal soul that lives on forever, and that this is just another life, and we've come, and I don't mean to minimize that it's just a life, it's a beautiful life, but it's one of those things where we come here for a purpose, whatever that is, for whatever reason our soul is to grow, and then we move on, and we cross over to the other side, and we rejuvenate, and we reconnect with our soul family, and then we give it another shot, and I think because I believe that, and because I've connected with spirits who have crossed over through talented mediums that have been spot on and just extremely specific and personal, that that faith and that belief and that knowing really helps. And sure, there's, I have coming up next weekend the anniversary of the passing of my beloved last dog, Sammy, whom I think about and
Yeah.
miss all the time. And I know it's going to be tough, but that's at the same time, I know that I can connect with him. I can meditate, I can connect with his spirit, and invite him to be with me. And so the
Yeah.
spiritual awakening, the spiritual process, what's there, what's there that most of us haven't realized is there until we go through this process. It's just so powerful. It's just, it's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
I love what you're saying about that and reconnecting with Sammy and everything. And it reminds me a little bit about in EMDR therapy for trauma, it's I'm not going to get into everything about it, but you basically walk through the trauma over and over and over and over again, and but in between times, you go to what you call your safe space, and I use my safe space to meditate all the time. And you're supposed to just, and you're supposed to engage all of your senses, which is incredible. And it's incredibly calming, because there's nothing that makes you more present than thinking about all your senses and what they're doing right now, So it's like if my safe space is a beach house somewhere, it's like I think, okay, I hear the waves. I can smell coffee brewing. I'm sitting here with my partner. He's making breakfast, and I can see the waves. And then I can smell, whatever. So it's interesting. It's so interesting when you engage those senses, how your body kind of relaxes and transforms, right?
Oh, visualization is so powerful. It
Yeah.
really is. It really
It
is.
really is.
So,
Absolutely.
So Erica, I want to ask you this question because when you, earlier when you were talking about meditation and starting with Headspace, and you started counting your days as you were going.
Yeah.
Do you find? Well, let me share why I asked this question before I actually ask it.
Mhm.
So I found that when I first started meditating, I was very innocent. And I don't. I didn't have any expectations. I didn't know what to expect. I just started doing it, and the results, as I shared, after a couple weeks, it was brilliant. Like all these things that I'd struggled with, it was like, wow, they've gotten so much better. And I think, shortly after that, after experiencing that, I started to go through this phase where now I started expecting stuff to happen, and
Yes.
and then I started reading books about meditation, because I didn't read books about meditation before I started meditating. It was just experiencing it. But I'd read these books from, say, a psychic or a medium that was like, if you want to connect with your spirit guides, or if you want this to happen, or if you want that to happen, here are the different things that you can, different ways you can use meditation to foster that. And I'd find myself in meditation expecting something to happen, and then it didn't.
Yes.
And it's like, oh man, it's like, what am I
What
doing?
did I do? What did I miss this time? Right?
Yeah.
Man.
and I found that I've had to train myself out of that stuff. And it's difficult, once you start, doing something and you get into a pattern. It's hard.
Yeah.
It can be difficult to unlearn that pattern. But did you experience that at all? Did you start getting sort of expectations through your meditation?
Yes, 100%. I would say that there's definitely a place in meditation, especially, for a while I was going in and doing acupuncture while I was doing meditation, and had, my practitioner had a singing bowl going, and like all the senses, right? And that was great, because definitely got into that headspace and body space where everything is buzzing, right? And it's kind of like a runner's high. And then I wanted that all the time, like, why can't I get there? And then the monkey mind would start again, and it would kind of sabotage my meditation. And oh my gosh, talk about like beginner's luck with meditation. The first go around, I ended up, gosh, I was probably 2 months in, and then I ended up seeing, just lucking out and getting a ticket to see Deepak Chopra speak.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not sure. Have you seen him speak in person before,
I
Anna?
have not in person, but
Okay.
I've watched him many a times on
Yeah.
on the old TV.
Right? Yeah. And so, like, in person, he almost always leads the crowd in a guided meditation. And I don't know, I wasn't expecting anything at all. I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, meh. At that point, I wasn't even really into meditation that much, and had this incredible out of body experience
Oh,
where I
wow.
was like, I had gone all the way to the back of the room, and I could see everybody else like in my meditation journey, during this visualization. And like, I mean, he went through all these steps, and he's like, okay, if you didn't hear me until this word, that meant you were this deep, like that kind of thing. Like that, he was kind of like equating it to how deep you got into your meditation. And I ended up being kind of the only one still with my hand up, when he got to the end, like, oh wow, you had a trip, basically. Yeah. And so, like, then I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. This kicks butt. I'm going to keep doing it just like this. So I downloaded a Deepak Chopra album, and visualizations. And no lie, the first time I listened to it, I fell asleep. That's it. Like, I was like, what? That I woke up and I was like, what did I do wrong? I'm a failure. What a letdown, and I actually had to talk to my Zen buddy that was helping me through Eckhart Tolle's book about it, because I was just obsessing over it, and what he kept saying to me, and I love that he said this. He said, just remember that once you've touched it, it's possible to get back there again, but you can't get back there by forcing it. And the important thing is that that it's there. Yeah. And just exist knowing that it's there, and that when you're meant to be there, you will. And if the universe doesn't think you need to be there at that time, you won't.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Absolutely. And it's like medicine, right? You get your medicine when you need it. You don't take it all the time. And
right. Exactly.
It's so true.
Mm-hmm.
So, Eric, I know I want to be cognizant of your time and our listeners' time here, but yeah. I wanted to, finish with this question, because frankly, I haven't had a lot of people on the podcast who have been through experienced significant trauma like you have, and I have so much respect for you and for your life, and for your openness and your heart. And I don't say this lightly, those who are listening, that you're very fortunate to have Erica on the show, kind of just sharing her story and her experiences. So, Erica, for those who are listening to this podcast now, who are either survivors, but even more so going through some sort of traumatic abuse, whether it's, in a relationship, or they were raped, or they were molested, and they're holding on to that. What's your message to them? What would you like to say, that you feel that would be beneficial for them to hear?
Yeah, so a couple things, and I'll try to be aware of time when I go through these. But the most important thing for me is to remember, and this is something that someone said to me, if you have gone through something, it's each experience is unique, and you can't compare experiences, because comparison, like I think you and I were talking about this earlier, Adam. You can drown in 6 inches of water or 6 feet of water, and either way you have drowned. So just remembering that whatever you've gone through, you have a right to say, like, that was damn hard. Like, and I'm still here, and I'm brave for being here. And don't compare it to anybody else's pain or journey. You have a right to feel that way. And I think that there's a little bit of, I don't want to call it an epidemic, but it's like this weird weird forgiveness epidemic, right? Like I feel like right now, in the survivor space, when it comes to spirituality, mostly, that I've talked to a lot of survivors that have been turned away from maybe organized religion because their pastor or a church leader or someone says, well, you need to forgive this person in order for you to move on. And I don't think that that's anybody's decision to make except for the person that went through it, and because trauma, like you carry it with you every single day. Like I said, like it's really hard to say like, yeah, I totally forgive this person for doing something to me that, many times I've wished that I would have died instead of going through, and like it's hard to just wrap your brain around that, and forgiveness is a powerful thing, but more so than anything, I just want survivors to like forgive yourself if you can't forgive, if that sounds weird. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't have the capacity right now to say like, oh, I'm cool, that's fine. That's totally fine. As far as you did mention, if people are going through a situation currently, which is, a little bit different, like in domestic situations or with a partner or somebody, I've worked with Sexual Violence Center over in Minneapolis. They're really, really great, a good resource. I'm not a professional when it comes to, I've helped people get out of situations before, but as far as professional advice, I don't feel super comfy with that. But just to be aware and to be smart and to be saving money so that you are ready to get out of your situation and to be aware of your surroundings. And it may sound like a silly, weird thing, but it's simple things like if you've looked up numbers on your computer to get help, like clear your browser history, that type of thing. The night that you're going to tell this person that you're leaving, I've had to walk people through hiding weapons in the house, right? Even like, hey, take the butcher knives and put them in a different drawer, that type of thing. And I hate that that's a thing that that you just become accustomed to telling people, but there's and above all, just know that none of it is your fault. And no matter what precautions you take or what you've been doing, it's never your fault. You always, I've talked to so many people who beat themselves up and same, like I was in a horrible domestic situation when I was in my early 20s and I just, for a while, was my own worst enemy, right? Because I would say, oh, Erica, you were so stupid to stay with him. And of course he would try to punch you because you were so dumb. Like, and that doesn't do anybody any good, to hear things like that, because I'm a firm believer that we can verbally abuse ourselves, and so just remembering that I had a rape counselor group lead once say, whatever you did or whatever you're doing is right because you're surviving. And that's what it takes to survive. If you're here, it's what you needed to do. So be easy on yourself. Yeah. And I know it's really heavy and it's really heavy to talk about. I belong to a group called Break the Silence, and I love that group with all of my heart. And it's an online community where people can talk to other survivors. And sometimes it's just a matter of having solidarity with someone over something where you go, oh, wait, you jump when you hear a guy's voice in line behind you at Target too? You jump behind the, the display, in fear, and you don't even think about it. Oh, wow. Oh, I guess I'm not crazy. And, yeah, those things are important. And I mean, it's why I speak out, because I feel like I went through most of this by myself. And it wasn't until I found other people who were willing to share, that I could recognize, like, oh, that was some crap. That was terrible. Like, you're allowed to have feelings about this, So, and it was then when you acknowledge it is when you can start your path to healing, So, yeah. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, a lot of wisdom there. A lot of really good sage advice, and Eric, I'm so grateful for you taking the time to be on the podcast. And is there anything? I know this is kind of an awkward segue from the last, right. But is there anything you'd like to plug? Is there anything you'd like to share in terms of what are you up to? What do you want people to know about? Feel free. The mic's all yours.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to think. I have been doing a lot of work right now around body positivity and this concept of visual diet, which basically means changing the images that you are ingesting in order to kind of find peace with your own body. It doesn't mean that you stop trying to improve or whatever, do whatever suits you, but we are fed a lot of lies, through the media every single day. And I think both of us have been in advertising and marketing, so we know it's like people prey on people's insecurities, right? And their need to feel, it's like they feel less than by seeing these images of, not all of us are two blonde supermodels. And so I have this group on Facebook. It's private and it's a safe space. It's called Visual Diet Diversity, and I post pictures of all sorts of people every single day, and nobody is shamed. It's not a skinny shaming group or anything like that either. And I just want people to. I found that I did this own experiment with myself where I changed my news feed and what I was seeing, and over the course of a year, I realized, hey, like I'm more comfortable in a dress now. Like little things that I hadn't even thought about, like I'm more confident now wearing this, and so there's that. And then the other thing, which is also a horrible segue, I'm giving a storytelling masterclass on April 3rd, and there's information about that. I promote it mostly on Twitter. My handle, Meet Erica, like nice to meet you, not like meat, like eat a lot of meat. Nice to meet you. Same thing on Instagram, meet_Erica. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, Erica, again, thank you very much for being on the podcast. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Erica Hanna. You can find her at pukerainbows.com, as well as the Facebook and social accounts that she shared in the podcast. Again, we're just so grateful to have you on the podcast, and maybe we'll find another time to meet up again and to talk about other cool stuff.
Cool. Thanks for creating this wonderful space, Adam, for these open and evolving conversations. It's pretty cool.
Hey, you know what? This is a community of people who we need this. We need honest and real conversations about spirituality, because oftentimes, we tend to see the social media side of it, where it's just the glitz and the glamour of it. But the reality of it is, for many of us, that it's a slug every day, and it's good. It's awesome. It's a blessing. It's nothing but gratitude to be going through it. But it definitely helps to know that there are other people who are in the same place and going through similar things and have going through other things, right? And so but thank you for those kind words, Erica. And friends, until we speak again, take care of yourselves and each other. Not trying to rip Jerry Springer off with that ending, but and we will see you next time on the SpiritWoke Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the SpiritWoke Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check out our website, SpiritWoke.com, and connect with the SpiritWoke community on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search SpiritWoke. Join us next time for another edition of the SpiritWoke Podcast. Namaste.